Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fulfillment Project. Today's guest is Paul von Zielbauer. Paul is a Pulitzer-nominated former New York Times investigative journalist and the creator of Aging with Strength, where he helps people build physical, mental, and emotional strength in the second half of life without falling for the noise, gimmicks, or scams of the longevity industry. He brings a rare combination of deep reporting, lived authentic experience, and a sharp bullshit detector to the question of how we actually age well. I'm really excited for this conversation. I've been interested in it for a long time. Healthspan, lifespan, what's it all mean for me? I'm trying to implement this stuff in my life. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Andy, it's great to be here, and I'm glad that you ask really good questions. So I'm excited to talk with you about all this.
Before we jump in, I've got a whole list of questions I want to get to. But first, everyone's wondering, how do you go from the New York Times Pulitzer-nominated writer to writing about old people and bone density and health and all that stuff?
I love that you just said old people, man. So I'm going to call you out and also praise you for old people. And I honestly, I'm glad that I'm earnestly heartened that you care about this subject, because you don't look older than 30, to be honest, and you may be older than 30, you may not be, but age is something. It's obviously it's relative. I'm 59, and to answer your question, I'll give you the short answer, and if you want me to give you the longer one, you can ask away. But the reason I got from there to here, it's been many years since I've been in the Times newsroom, but I left the paper after 11 years because it was no longer, the way I put it is, my radiantly imagined future and its vision for what I could do or should do started to diverge. And this is not uncommon. Like, anybody who's worked for a large organization, especially at the higher echelons of the industry, whether it's like Goldman Sachs in finance or Salesforce for tech or whatever it may be, it's like the institution and your ideas for what you're capable of may not align after several years. And, I just didn't want to keep on doing the same thing that the paper was just saying, yeah, just keep doing that. And so I decided to leave, which was a really, really difficult decision. I mean, difficult. It felt, I spent months just like I spent, like I got to the New York Times, am I really just going to leave voluntarily? And it was something I had to do. But to answer your question, I went into tech for several, I'm compressing years now. I went into working for, tech companies because, frankly, the RSUs were really good. The stock options were really good. It was a financial future response. And then I'll be very candid with you to wrap up my answer, is that at some point, because I told you I'm 59, at some point, so I flipped to a venture capital firm as the head of content. And then like venture firms are wont to do, they hire you and they're like, you're the best thing ever. Please come work for us. And then after about 2 years, they're like, we're done now. Thank you for working for us. And,
gosh.
here's a year of healthcare and, a little bit of runway, and off you go. And at that point, I was 56. Again, I'm just being really candid with you guys, because I think there are a lot of other people to whom this has happened and is happening and will soon happen for AI and other reasons too, not just AI. But what happened for me is I have 11 years at the New York Times. I have a Fulbright scholarship. I have a graduate degree from Columbia in journalism. I thought, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but it's like, I have blue chip experience. I'll find something else. It's like, if this wasn't a fit, okay, I'll find something better, and I'll take my time. And the reality at that point, I was 56, 57, and I didn't get one offer. I spent a year and a half, 2 years, like really looking, and this is like 2023 and 2024.
Yeah.
Looking for similar work in tech, doing what I've been doing, content head of content, senior writer, managing editor, whatever it may be. I've done all these things in tech based on, off of my experience in journalism. And there was a few interviews that got to the third or fourth, and then there was not ever one offer. And I thought, like, this is weird, man. Like,
Interesting.
usually.
Yeah.
And so I started talking to my friends, and just, how's it going, Paul? And I'd tell them, and the number of people relatively my age, some younger, who said to me, you know, w- I'm hearing from 5, 6 other people what you're telling me right now about, like, you just can't understand what the hell's going on. Like, there's no interest. The market, it seems
Yeah.
to have closed. And at some point I realized, oh, I think this is ageism. I don't know for sure. Like, I don't want to make any excuses. It could be me. Could be just like I come off as a real asshole on Zoom interviews, but I don't think so. Um, and I think ageism happened to me, and I'd never even thought of ageism as a thing. I knew what it meant, but I was just like, well, I'm not old. Like, it doesn't happen to me, and it wouldn't happen to me. Why would it? Well, I think it did, and I think it just sort of involuntarily, like, just slaps you in the face. And again, not to make sort of convenient excuses, but I think it plays a role, especially when I was looking primarily for remote work. That for what you got to get the job basically through a screen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh my
because
gosh.
that happened, like, I know we're not dwelling on that, but that was like the fulcrum for. Eventually, I thought, you know what, this I have to make my own success here. Like, becoming a salaried employee is not going to happen. So
Mhm.
that's why, late 2024, I started Aging with Strength, this Substack. And I've been thinking about aging with strength for a long time because I have a 10-year-old daughter. I'm 59, so I'm an older dad. And, I really love being a dad. And I want to be able to be active with my daughter when she's 30, 35, 40. That means I'm like 80 to 90 years old. And I don't want her pushing me around in some chair with wheels. I want to be able to walk to the diner or to the library with her. Um, I want to be active and fit, and so I don't want. So I started thinking, well, how do I do this? How do I age with strength? And strength doesn't just mean physical; it means obviously cognitive, strength. Dementia and other cognitive neurodegenerative diseases are a real issue. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to need help getting up from a chair or the bathroom, or the toilet. How do I eat properly so that I grew up in the Chicago suburbs? I go from being like burger and fries dad to being Mediterranean diet dad, or vegetarian on 3 days a week dad. Somebody that's going to that whose diet isn't going to be a hindrance, but actually be a tailwind in
Mm.
my longevity
Yeah.
journey, shall we say. So all of these things I've been thinking about, and I decided, you know what, if I'm thinking about it, 10,000 people a week in the United States are turning 60 now. I mean, it's an
Wow.
enormous amount of people. It could be a day, like, I don't know, but it's a lot of people who are like, we are an aging society. And so if I'm thinking about this stuff, there are other people also thinking about it. And I have the tools by virtue of my, you know, uh, investigative reporting skills to, as you graciously introduced me as, somebody who can separate the bullshit, of which there is a, a massive amount of longevity bullshit, by credible people with MD after their names, even. There's
Yeah.
a lot of bullshit and a lot of half truths about supplements, about what you should do, and there's financial interests that are not being acknowledged by a lot of influencers. So I was somebody who could detect that bullshit and write about it, and also write about my own journey, as someone who I've been weight training since I was 12, because in 7th grade John Allen threatened to beat me up before the end of the year was out, and I took him seriously. I remember he said literally, "Zielbauer, I'm going to beat your ass before the end of the year." And I was like, "Okay, John." And I went home and I was like, "Shit, what do I do?" Like, this guy's huge.
Yeah. Gotta
So
start doing something.
so I would start, I was like lifting those sand-filled plastic weights at home, like this weight set I asked my parents to get me for Christmas. And so my point is, I've been weight training for 47 years now. I've had 7 orthopedic surgeries because I've overdone it. And, every person's body is asymmetric. So I've just gone overboard. And so I've learned I've sort of gone through the fire of doing the work. In college, people asked me if I was a bodybuilder, and I was like, no, dude, I'm just going to the gym. So I obviously, achieved a lot of physical fitness as a lifelong soccer player too, but then my body started breaking down in my 40s and 50s with the surgeries like shoulder, knee, biceps tendon tears, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm at the point where, and this is kind of hopefully answering your question, is just being able to understand what to do and what not to do, and whose advice to take and whose advice to dismiss, and understanding of the reasons and the factors that go into aging with strength in all those different ways. Sorry for the long answer.
Well, it's amazing. A couple things. One, you've been on Substack for 2 years. You have over 17,000 followers, which is incredible. It just highlights the relevance of your topic. And I'm so happy you're on Fulfillment Project today, because no matter how old you are, this is a topic you should be thinking about if you're not already. I'm 36 years old. When I was 30, I had my first health scare,
Mm,
the first thing that happened from the outside that wasn't self-induced. And I thought, oh my gosh, it was the first time in my life I didn't feel invincible.
yeah.
And I thought, if I don't start working on this now, the dementia that my grandfather had is going to slip into me. The bone density issues of older people is going to hurt me. I'm not going to be able to run and wrestle and play with my kids
Hmm.
the way I want to.
Hmm.
And as my boy Bob Dylan said, I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now, when he was with the Byrds. And that's a mantra me and my friend Jeff live by, is like, oh, I was older then. I'm younger than that now. Like
Hmm.
every day, I want to feel younger than I did mentally, emotionally, physically. So I'm very invested in this. I love that you cut through the BS. And let's just get into it. I want to provide some high value targets for the audience. Hey, everyone, quick 10-second ask from you. If you're digging the show and you're watching on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up and comment your favorite part. If you're listening on Spotify, please give this show a 5-star rating. On iTunes, please leave a quick review. If you're listening on Substack, please subscribe and join the comments. You may want to subscribe in a few different places. For example, YouTube, you get all of our short content, 60-second to 90-second clips, our segments where we segment out 1 to 6 minute different segments of each episode. And then if you subscribe on the Substack, I summarize the episode in a newsletter. You can read it in a couple minutes. And then a couple days after the episode, I put out a self-reflection guide to help you personalize the content to your life. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Please share it with a friend. Paul, for someone who's old and thinking about starting something physically and doing it safely, how do they do that, and how much is enough?
Wow, that's a good question. So I would say, to be concise, the first thing to do is not follow what you see on YouTube or read on Aging with Strength, which is my Substack, but really figure out why you're doing it. One of the best pieces of advice when I decided not nothing physical, but changing my diet to be less Midwestern dude and more where I come from now, like sort of more California, eating for health for the long run, was figure out why you want to eat this way. Because if
Mm,
you're only doing it for some kind of superficial reason, oh, I want my abs to show, I want to lose a few pounds. It's usually not a good way to stay motivated. But if you understand why you're doing it, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I'm 59. I'm an older dad. I want to be around to play tennis with her when she's 35.
yes.
That's the motivation. And so I would apply that logic to your question, which is, why do you want to be in shape? and understand what your goals are. Is it to get bigger muscles? Is it to look good in your jeans and a t-shirt, which is, like that's legit? Or is it to be able to walk at speed when you're 85, and not use a walker with the tennis balls in the bottom? Uh, and so how to do it, if that was your other part of your question, Andy, is,
Yeah.
like I said, ignore what most, like 95% of what you see on YouTube, because there's agendas, and like there's so many like old guys, talking about getting jacked. You don't need to be jacked. Like no one needs to be jacked after 50. Um, what you do need to be is like lean and have what I call neuromuscular fitness. I didn't make that up, but it's a way that your brain and your nervous system and your muscles all work together, so that you're not just having
Mm.
like biceps, you're having strength, the strength to pick up a really heavy grocery bag, strength to carry your grandkids, the strength to do functional stuff, like uproot a thing from your garden or whatever. So I would say really good form is way more important than how much you're lifting, or competing with like the college kid in the gym who's doesn't isn't paying attention to you anyway. And so understanding why you want to get to what goal you have, and then starting with really good form and not just following somebody on the internet.
What do you say to someone that says, I'm losing muscle? How can I reverse this?
Well, I would say first and foremost, are you getting enough protein? Because without the protein in your diet, it's you could go to the gym 6 days a week, and you wouldn't be putting on muscle. You might be losing. The medical term is sarcopenia, which is a big
Mm.
problem. It's losing muscle mass, as you age, particularly in the latter couple decades of life. And so getting enough protein, and we like there's protein water now, there's protein everything. It's not hard to find protein. It's a little bit overdone at the grocery store. But number two, I would say stay away from the middle of the grocery store, where all the stuff in packages that never spoils is sold, because that's ultra
Yeah.
processed food. And the cliche, which is a really good one actually, as a word person, I'm against cliches, but I'm for this one, which is buy your groceries around the edges of the store, like the fresh produce, fruit, meat. I'm a meat eater. You don't have to be one, to get plenty of protein. Beans and legumes are great at that. But buy stuff that the way I wrote a piece recently called um, talking about eating and moving like it's 1899, playing off the Prince song.
Party like it's 1899,
Yeah,
baby.
I mean, really, like, eat like it's 1899, which, like, forget the dysentery and the typhoid, that we don't want that, but we do want, the food that spoils. Like, if you don't eat it, it spoils. That means it's whole food. So eat like it's 1899 and move like it's 1899, meaning we're all sitting on our asses, way too much nowadays. Most of us are.
Yeah.
And it's important to just move weight from one place to another, just like our great grandparents and their parents did. And again, we don't want the hardships of, all that of those past years, but we do want the movement and the intentionality. So, I think that you don't need a gym membership. I'll just say this to wrap this question. Like, you don't need to go to a gym and lift barbells and dumbbells. You can do 10 push-ups or 5 air squats twice a day, 3 times a week, and you are building muscle if you're eating right, And so little things really matter. If you know what compound interest is,
Yep.
it's the same concept with doing a little bit of exercise on your way from the couch to the bathroom. Oh, I'm just going to do 5 air squats. Oh, I'm just going to pick up this dumbbell that I keep here intentionally next to the sofa, and I'll just do 10 reps on the way to, the bedroom. That little
Yeah.
stuff is compound interest. So that's what I would say.
I love that. I love that. If you're going to the bathroom, I would not recommend a couple squats beforehand, though. You might squeeze one out by
I mean,
accident.
it depends on your level of, yeah. Talk to your urologist before you do that. Good point.
Paul, there's so much bullshit on the internet. How do we know if this new fad will actually extend life or brain health?
Um, it's really easy. If it's a new fad, it won't. Like I'm being a little bit flippant, but I honestly I 90% mean that, fads come and go. I see supplements. So I wrote a piece recently, Aging with Strength, about the top, what I call the top 12 longevity supplements. And like there's NAD plus, there's places you can go and get an IV drip of NAD plus. What's NAD plus? It's this molecule that's in every part of your body. Um, it's being marketed as a sort of a key to longevity.
Yeah.
And can we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah.
It's entirely full of shit. You can spend hundreds of dollars for NAD pills, NAD drips, it's just NAD facials. And it doesn't, there's no clinical evidence that taking a NAD supplement or many of the other supplements has an effect on humans. There's lots of evidence that it works, in mice or that it works in human cells in a petri dish. But as you know, I'm not a scientist, but I talk to enough to say to know that you can't just sort of assume the same thing happens. So I would say avoid, supplements that you're seeing everywhere, because if you're seeing everywhere, it's a good sign that they don't really work. There are some exceptions, like creatine, for example. Creatine, my mom is 82, and I was telling her that, Mom, you should probably start taking creatine. She doesn't exercise that much. She's not a gym person, but I take it for muscle building and also brain health. There's a lot of evidence,
Yeah.
and my friend Dr. Annie Fenn on Substack, she has this amazing Substack called Brain Health Kitchen, which is about food, but it's about it's about brain health and the ways to achieve it and keep it as you get old and very old. And creatine is just a winner. It's a winner. I used to think like creatine when I was in my 30s was like something that muscle heads took to get huge at the gym. And I never took it because that wasn't what I was interested in. But now I'm taking it, not to get huge at the gym, but to get a little bit more muscle fitness, but also just do whatever I can do to optimize my chances of avoiding cognitive neurodegeneration, like all of the dementias and so forth, which are a significant part of many people's lives, unfortunately, as they get older. So those are two things. The other way that I would suggest people validate whether something works or not is go to the sources that you trust. Uh, when
Mm.
I watch YouTube a lot. Like every night, I'm sort of looking for different things. Sometimes it's about the Chicago Blackhawks highlights, but sometimes it's watching a Tim Ferriss clip or other people who. It's not Andrew Huberman, that's for sure. But it's you have to, which I
Ooh,
mean
why
you have.
not? He's one of my go-tos.
I don't trust Andrew Huberman. I think he's full of shit.
He's
Respectfully,
too
I
big
think.
into the money.
Well, he's a neuroscientist at Stanford. Okay, so he's got his bona fides. I'm not a neuroscientist at Stanford, so you can easily say like, "Who the hell are you, Zielbauer?" And my answer is, well, I am a reporter. I'm an investigative reporter by training, and so when Andrew Huberman talks about neuroscience, I listen. If he's talking about neuroscience and then telling me to buy a certain kind of uh, blue light blocking glasses, I'm listening for what he gets out of it. Because the thing about Huberman is he doesn't tell you when he's recommending something that he has a financial interest in. Sometimes he does, and other times, in my experience, he hasn't. But where I find him less credible is when he wanders into, and this happens a lot with, because in the influencer economy we live in, you have a neuroscientist talking about VO2 max or brain health or how to sprint. It's like you're a neuroscientist, and that's your expertise. And if you're telling me about all these other things that you think that you've mastered, then I have to wonder how you've mastered all of these things, and how much, and the products that you're pitching, because he does recommend specific products. Why are you recommending those products? It's like, show me the science. There's another doctor named Mark Hyman who I recently wrote about, and the title of the piece was, "Is your longevity doctor scamming you?" Because
Oh, yo.
yeah, and Dr. Hyman recommends this supplement, and he writes, the email that he sends out is something on the order of like, what, I was recently looking into this, and this really caught my attention. And then here's all the research. He cited 15 research papers saying why this supplement works. As it turns out, 4 or 5 of those 15 were written by the CEO of the company selling the supplement. Dr. Hyman
Oh my
didn't tell you
gosh.
that. The other papers were research papers on dolphins or mice, or cells in a human cells in a petri dish, not people. There wasn't one randomized clinical trial that shows that this supplement works. But he didn't tell you that because he also didn't tell you that he has a financial interest in you buying this thing. And I find that rampant, that what I call sort of the longevity chiseler pitch, where they have a financial interest, but they're not quite telling you the whole story, or they're not acknowledging it, to be utterly rampant in the longevity space, because it is the Wild West right now. It's a tens of billions of dollar industry, longevity and supplements, and many people are just, I think, are trying to make as much money as possible, and they're cutting corners. And especially if you have a medical license um, in your title, I think it's just important to respect the trust that people naturally have in that license, and in the MD after your name, or the DO, or whatever it may be, or just being a neuroscientist from Stanford. So we wandered off topic, but that's my answer.
Yeah, well, that's one reason I love Tim Ferriss, is because he says if you learn how to read research, you'll save yourself a lot of money and a lot of time, because people cite research and it's like the fine print in a contract. No one reads it. They just assume since the link is there, you're good to go.
Yep.
But Tim would say if you know what to look for, you'll find most of that research doesn't actually back up the claim that the person is making.
He's totally right. I mean, I didn't know he said that, but he said it better than I did.
He said that recently on Sean Ryan's podcast. I picked it up and I thought, okay, maybe I need to take a class on that.
Sean Ryan. Okay, another interesting guy. Sorry, I didn't mean like Sean Ryan's got issues with who he brings on. People like Gary Brecka, who don't get me started. But anyway, Ferriss is right. So Tim's absolutely right about that. And like I said, he said it better than I did, and probably in fewer words too. It's like, it reminds me of the Warren Buffett idea of, hey, how do you make money? How are you so good at this? And his answer, I'm paraphrasing, is I read the contracts. I read the prospectus. I read the quarterly earnings report from the CEO and all the execs. I read through that stuff, and you got to do the legwork. So it's the same thing with aging and strength and longevity. Is like my example with Mark Hyman, like 15 studies. It's, if you just take him at his word, okay, I'll buy it. It sounds like there's 15 studies. Well, a third of them are from the company CEO, and the others are on dolphins and other animals that aren't humans. And people don't know that if it's not a clinical trial on a human, then it's not proven to work in people. People aren't mice.
Amen. Paul, fear of falling is huge. You see balance training everywhere. What is the number one thing people can do to help with their fear of falling?
Balance training. So I on my Substack, I put a number of videos. Like, I do these little short 3-minute, I call them Workout Wednesdays. 3 minutes you can do at home in your street clothes, no equipment required. And a lot of them are balance related. Because as we get older, I believe that lower body strength is the most important thing. It's good to have strength everywhere, but balance, let's face it, from let's say your torso down, is really important to stay strong, because strength alone won't help you maintain balance and avoid falls. But balance exercises, the simple stuff. Can you balance on one leg for 10 seconds and then do the other leg? And what's important to note about all of this is that people are asymmetric. We're not, super athletes that are just symmetrically good, as good with our left side and right as our right side, or vice versa. So I, for example,
Oh,
have a lot more balance on my right leg, and I can balance for much longer on my right leg than I can on my left leg. And that asymmetry is important to understand, so that you can attack that weakness, so that so-called weakness. So that's one thing, just doing the basics. But also, what I started doing, I just actually wrote about this. I wrote a post about, you should quit bar squats, like bar squatting, where you have a barbell and you put weight on it and then you do the squats. It's like one of the ingrained ways of showing your power and your strength. It also is a great way to compress your spine and lead to a lot of back problems, because it bakes in all of the asymmetries that are in your hip flexors, your medial glutes, your SI joint, all the stuff that's in your middle. All the asymmetries. If you're starting at 50 to do squats, for example, bar squats, um, you're baking in all those problems. It's like building a house with, on a foundation that's crooked. You're just building it into the foundation. So here's my answer to your question: is like, instead of bilateral strength training to improve balance, single leg, unilateral strength training, stuff like
mm,
just being able to hip hinge, hinge at the hip and raise your leg. So you're sort of like, you're doing this with your arms and your legs, and you're just sort of hinging at the hip on one leg. That just trains all of those muscles in that, um, the leg that's on the floor, that's touching the ground, all of those muscles in your knees and your hips to strengthen, because they're firing, because that's what's keeping you balanced. So whether it's weighted or just done without any weights at all, a lot of single leg strength work. Again, you could do at home in 5 seconds on the way to the bathroom or the bedroom. So that's what I would say as a way to maintain and improve your balance.
Paul, a lot of people are worried about their bone density and osteoporosis risk. What's one thing a person should consider on a regular basis to help avoid their bone density worries?
Yeah, osteoporosis, big deal, especially for women in menopause and after menopause. It's a big issue, and the one thing you can do is lift heavy or medium heavy things. Like, you need weight training, resistance training. It doesn't have to be dumbbells. It doesn't have to be at a gym. You don't have to spend money to go find a way to lift weights. You can lift. I have a sandbag right here, in my living room. You can lift your toolbox. You can lift a bag of oranges, like whatever works for you. Bag of oranges might be a little light, but maybe not for some people. So my answer is, um, work your muscles. You're
Mm,
jumping rope. I mean, that might be something people want to do or not, but like, walking is not enough. That's the other thing I would say is, and this is not me being a scientist, this is me repeating what I've heard from credible science, is that walking is a great exercise. Everyone should do it. I try to walk at least 2 miles a day. It makes a huge difference between 0 and, 1 mile or 2. But it's not enough to solve osteoporosis. Osteoporosis requires sort of resistance against gravity. So jumping jacks actually help. Weight resistance training, as I said before, it could be the smallest thing, but just lifting something a little heavy every day really makes a difference. And that is what keeps your bones dense.
I love this. If someone is 52 and overwhelmed, what's the smallest non negotiable strength routine that actually will move the needle for them? And what's the biggest mistake beginners make because the internet overcomplicates things?
Right. So, what's the 52-year-old non athlete to start building muscle, you said?
I didn't say specifically. Yeah, they're feeling like they got to get in shape.
Okay. So I'm going to give you an answer but I'm going to qualify it by saying, it really depends on your goals. Like understanding why you want to get into
Mm.
shape is a huge part of uh, actually getting in shape, as opposed to starting and stopping and starting and stopping and getting motivated and then losing your motivation. So understanding your why is a really important first thing. Why am I doing this? Is it because I don't want to have dad bod anymore? Is it like, is it vanity? Do I just want to look good at the beach? Those are, legit reasons. Or is it kind of more toward what you were saying, which is, health scare, dementia in the family or whatever, and I don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
understanding your why is really important. And then moving from there, again, without sounding like there's one way to do this, because there isn't, um, is creating just sort of like a base layer of fitness. Like when you go skiing or when you go out in the bitter cold, you put on a base layer, the stuff underneath, your shirt and your sweater and your jacket and your pants. And
Oh,
it's
I've
the
never heard
same.
it said like that before.
I just think a base layer of fitness is really important because, like you're not going to go out. Let's say you do get a gym membership and start just like heavy squats, bench press, like the stuff that you think, are what someone like you should do in order to get muscles. Well, that's not really the right way to do it. The base layer is understanding good form, because without, especially if you're older, I mean, really at any age, but particularly after, I'd say 40, 45, 50, is if you start doing exercises with weights, with crappy form, you will you will start damaging your body, and it won't show up necessarily as like boom injury, but it may show up as nagging back pain for 2 years, and then boom, your back goes out, and then you have a big problem. So good form, starting with that base layer, just achieving a level of cardio fitness, meaning just sort of getting your heart rate up, getting a little bit of sweat regularly so that you're not winded, running like one block. Like you just need a base layer of cardio fitness, which, for example, like jumping rope is one of the best things that I started doing in the last year. It takes 5 minutes. You can carry it anywhere. It's mobile. You can do it anywhere, and it's not pretty necessarily, like it doesn't make you look cool when you start.
Yeah.
But if you can get over your ego, of not looking cool or not looking strong, at the gym or in the park when you're doing your exercise, just getting your body used to cardiorespiratory fitness, and then a base layer of strength so that you're training your brain. This is because here's the other thing. It's really important to understand. I learned this the hard way, is that you don't just sort of move a weight and then get a muscle. Your nervous system and your brain and your muscles and your body, like your tendons, your fascia, 80% of the stuff you can't see inside all of that is connected, and your body needs to understand, to learn, like it's like you learn math with your brain or a language. It
Yeah.
needs to learn how to move together and how to work all those things together. So there's something called, if you ever heard of old man strength, Andy, it's like,
Yeah.
you don't look that strong, but you sure are strong, old man. And I think I understand what they're talking about now. It's like, that's neuromuscular fitness. Neuromuscular fitness. It incorporates strength, not because you can just move a heavy weight, but the way that you coordinate your body through its nervous system and your brain and your muscles to all work together to move weight and to be strong. So that's how regardless of age, you don't have to be an old man to have old man strength. Helping your body understand how to learn to work in a coordinated fashion is really important. So that's how I would start.
How long do these things take to build up, become proficient at, and to see results?
Again, a good question. I will also qualify it by saying depends on what you mean by results, and
That's why
what.
I love you, Paul. Everything is nuanced because life is nuanced. People are nuanced. So thank you for those
Yeah,
qualifications,
I
because
mean,
the internet tries to sell it as a simple, you take this supplement and you'll get a six pack. and have visible muscles. And it's
Yeah.
not that easy.
Yeah, no, it's not like this. Like this one exercise. If you want muscles, do this. Like all the YouTube headlines, and they're like, I don't really want to click on that because your do this is going to be some bullshit thing that doesn't apply to me because those are not your goals, are not my goals. So again, I'll go back to like, what are your goals and how do you define strength and fitness?
How long does it take to see results? What I'm getting at a little
Mhm,
bit is for someone my age, why
mhm.
should someone my age be interested in what you're talking about in their 30s, 40s, and even
Oh,
someone in their 50s? You can still feel very strong and capable in your 50s and 60s.
so um, just to answer the question directly, how long is it? I mean, not long. I mean, if you are starting from zero, like zero level of resistance training, for example, zero level of cardiorespiratory, or let's say it's 10 or 15 because you're not completely out of shape. It doesn't take long by doing a little bit every day. This notion of compound interest in finance directly applies to fitness, whether it's uh, physical fitness, whether it's brain health fitness, emotional strength, spiritual strength, all the different strengths that matter as you get older, whether you're 30 or 50 or 70. It just takes a little bit of effort every day um, to start making a big difference. This is one thing I started recently. It's just a practical tip. It doesn't really it's an indirect answer to your question, but around the house, I started leaving weights in the path that I take most often, like from my nice leather chair, which I can sit in 8 hours a day, although I shouldn't. From that to the kitchen, there's a sandbag that weighs 130 pounds. I'll just pick it up on the way. I put it in the middle of the room so that I can't avoid it. And if I just do 10, I grab it and do 10 squats with that thing. Okay, I'm
Whoa.
like, I mean, it doesn't have to be 130. It could be 30 pounds. I have another one that's
Totally.
40.
For anyone can match that to their personality in
Yeah,
life.
right. And so, and then I have some dumbbells and a couple of bands. And, if I'm just walking, okay, I'll do 10 curls and then I'll leave it over by the bathroom. And then when I'm out of the bathroom, I'll bring them back. Or I'll farmer carry like 250-pound dumbbells up the stairs and then down. I mean, you got to be careful and do it, not overdo it and not injure yourself, but just little ways of moving like it's 1899. This is that subject again. Like I've written about eating like it's 1899, meaning whole foods, uh, fresh foods, not packaged foods, and moving like it's 1899, like our great grandparents or their parents moved in ways that just required moving weight from one place to another. That was how life was then, and a lot more physical. And too many of us, me included, sit at a laptop all day, and that's not how the human body was intended to live. Bodies were meant to move, as my doctor of osteopath, who fixes my SI joint, says. And I've taken that to heart. So there's lots of small ways to just create that base layer of fitness.
I love that. Move and eat like it's 1899. That is a great framework to make it simple. When in doubt, that's a great question for the audience to ask themselves. If I lived in 1899, would I be moving like this? Would I be eating like this? If
Yeah.
the answer is no, maybe it's time to think about another way.
Here's a practical way to move and eat like this. So instead of driving 6 blocks to the grocery store or 4 blocks, can I walk? Yeah, but then I'd have to carry the groceries back. Exactly. You'd have to carry the
Yeah.
groceries.
Which is why one reason I think Europeans seem to be healthier generally than Americans is because it's a more walkable lifestyle
Yeah.
over there. They're used to walking more than getting in their car. So they are just the simple things just to make ordinary life
Yeah.
happen. They're carrying
Yeah.
their
I mean, urban
groceries.
planning matters a lot. So the cities in Europe, there's some in America too, but that create urban walk, like they make a reformer's car street into a pedestrian zone. So it just, I think it really matters to think deliberately about how much am I going to walk versus drive, these short distances. That's one way to just achieve that, beginning to achieve that base layer of fitness.
Paul, will strength training help people live longer?
No, no, I don't think so.
What's
It's
the
really
value of strength training?
well. It will help people live the years they have in a more healthy, enjoyable way. If you can get up from your chair when you're 85 without help, if you can get up from the toilet, you know, again without help, if you can maintain your physical independence, your cognitive independence, um, because you're eating well, you're helping your brain stay healthy. There's plenty of evidence to show that physical activity, and again, it doesn't have to be massive gym based weight training. It could be just, like gardening, moving a wheelbarrow full of dirt, whatever, like some kind of using your muscles activity that has a huge impact on your cognitive health as well. So, longevity, there's something called health span. Like we often talk about lifespan. That's been the sort of the conventional phrase. Now people talk about health span, and that means the time in the amount of life you have that is healthy, not just that you're alive, because no one wants to be alive and be cognitively impaired or physically degenerated, right? So I would focus on the years you have to be healthy rather than trying to extend your life, because if you extend it without health, why? What's the point?
In case people glossed over that, can you reiterate what you just said, the distinction between health span and lifespan? I think this is very important for people that haven't heard these two terms and appreciated the significance of the difference between them. Paul, hit him. Hit him hard, baby. Left hook right in the jaw.
Okay. So lifespan is, like we all know, it's like how long you're going to live, how long you do live. And everyone wants to live longer now. But instead of living as long as possible and focusing on that, think about health span and how long you can live healthy, because living longer, but living a shitty life longer isn't worth it. If you can't, you know, let, sorry, I'll just be very graphic. You can't wipe your butt and you can't feed yourself and you can't recognize your children or your family when they walk in a room. That's not healthy. That's not health span. That's just lifespan. And so the focus shouldn't
Whoa.
be on living as long as you can. It should be on living for as healthy as you can for the longest amount of time.
Yes! That is huge. I think that's another one of those frameworks that can change a lot of decisions people make. I want to live the years I have as much as possible. It's like putting the focus on the right thing, the here
Mhm.
and the now. I want today to be as good as it can be because I don't know how many days I'm guaranteed. So let's not squander what I have
Right.
and let's optimize the days that I do have.
There's one other thing, Andy, that I wanted to mention with regard to health span and lifespan and, the amount of years and longevity. And that's that, the longevity industrial complex, as I call it, is just a billions and billions industry of that is so full of shit mostly, because it's just trying to take people's anxiety and turn it into profits. Because if you buy this supplement, if you do this thing, if you go to this clinic, and go into a hyperbaric oxygen chamber and do red light or infrared sauna, you'll live longer. Well, you probably won't, because I just actually wrote about this. It turns out that the majority of your ability to live a certain amount of years is baked into your genetic uh, composition. Not all of it. And it doesn't mean that if your parents live longer that you're going to live a long life too, but it says that you have the ability, if you can get to 70, 75 disease free, then your genes start, like your gene potential starts kicking in. It contributes like 50 to 70% of your ability to live longer. So you could eat you could eat the perfect Mediterranean diet. You could weight train every day. You could take care of yourself. You could take the supplements, and then you could die at 68 if, you get into a car accident, or if you get a disease, cancer, for example, which half of all humans get some form of. So it's really not about trying to live as long as like doing stuff that's going to make you live longer because the stuff is no guarantee. Like there's so many other factors that you have to take care of first. So take care of what's like central to your life, your brain health, your physical health, your emotional health. One big thing that people forget about is social health, like the the so-called superagers, the people who live beyond 80 with zero chronic illness, which are very few people. Very few people get to 80 with zero chronic illnesses in this
Yeah.
country. And those who do have a remarkable similarity. Like there's all different ways to achieve that. But what research shows most of them have is a packed social calendar. They have friends.
Hmm.
They have like bridge dates, card dates, bingo dates, bocce ball, like whatever it is, watching like they have friends and they're social, and that really matters. So that is an undervalued, but hugely important part of longevity.
That's something I probably need to prioritize more in my personal life is you can't let those social things go because they're the first ones to get cut typically when the schedule gets busy and life
Yeah,
gets busy.
yeah.
I can cut that out, but maybe that's more important than whatever I'm replacing it with.
I'm like you. I mean, I don't know if you're an introvert, but I'm an introvert, meaning I like my alone time. Like I can go a long time just sort of being relatively alone, and I'm fine. But I don't want to, indulge that too much. I don't want to become a lone wolf because I actually think that's something I have to actively think about mitigating as I get older. Is I have to like keep that circle of friends and just sort of robust, and that takes a lot of work.
There's a bunch of scams out there. Everyone's trying to sell something from Huberman to Tucker Carlson. They're all selling us this crap and people trust them. So they buy what they say because they like other things that they say. So they just
Right.
assume that these nicotine pouches are healthy or the cold plunge is healthy or whatever.
Yeah.
Coming from a cold plunger myself. But um, how do people cut between the BS, the truth and the lies, the yin and the yang? How do they know, Paul, what they
Yeah.
should follow and what they shouldn't?
It's a really good question. I mean, we're just, it's like drinking from the fire hose in terms of the information that's available to us. It's just like going down our throats at a high pressure volume. And how do you distinguish between what's bullshit and what is credible? And I think it really depends on the way to do that is figure out who and what you trust, the people you trust and why you trust them, not just because they sound good or they have great, they have green eyes that you like to look at on YouTube or whatever. That's Andrew Huberman, um, or uh, or media organizations that you trust. I mean, not many people trust journalists and media organizations anymore, and there's some good reasons why. But like I will. So what I do, this is kind of, I guess, the base answer is I triangulate my answers. I'm like, okay, if Huberman says it, I'll give it a 10% weight out of 100 because I don't frankly trust him. If the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal write about this particular research study showing how to increase your longevity, and I'll read all three and sort of triangulate. Okay, I'll put a 40 to 80% weight on that. And then I have people on, for example, on Substack that I trust. Some of them are doctors. Annie Fenn, Fenn. She's a medical doctor. She writes about brain health. I trust Annie because I've read her and she is no bullshit, and she will give you real information, and she's not trying to sell you something. There are other doctors like Eric Topol who wrote a book called Superagers last year. That is he's a cardiologist by training, and that doesn't automatically make him credible, but he looks at evidence and he's also very much against the charlatans of the world. And so I will take all these things and, it's like you put them on a chart, plot them on a graph, so to speak. And like, where's the center of that? And I think that's how that's the way to have what I call longevity literacy. You need to know who's full of shit and you need to be able to trust your instinct. Like, am I being sold something here along with this really great advice, or is this just, credible reporting, and honest thought? And I think you just have to be willing to put in the work nowadays, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and when in doubt, live like it's 1899.
Yeah, and
Simplicity.
one way to do that, Andy, is to
How?
not look at your phone. Because in 1899, people really didn't look at their phones very much. And so, like, honestly, I think this is a big deal. Like, uh, I stop, for example, I just, like, it's not a novel idea to think and to say, we should really put down our phones more often. I mean, we all know that humans were not meant to get into fights with avatars on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. To like just have all of this nastiness because you're arguing or fighting with somebody whom you don't know, who you can't see, whose name is some fake name. Like, that's not the way to live. And looking at our phones all the time is really a negative, deleterious part of our lives right now. Sometimes we have to, and sometimes the phones do great things, but being able to not be addicted to them is really important.
Amen. Last question, because we're
Yep.
running up against time, but Lord knows I got a whole list of other ones. Maybe if I can get you back on, I'd love to, Paul. But you touched on this earlier, so this is the one I'm going to grab
Mhm.
because I think I want to drive this home for the audience. The longevity industrial complex, supplements, clinics, doctors. Give us your bullshit detector checklist. What are the top red flags that someone is being sold expensive longevity theater, and what's worth paying for instead?
It comes down to really asking that question of, why is this person telling me this? I've got an email, like, I'll just give the Dr. Mark Hyman example of, here's a guy who's a medical doctor. Okay, so he's a doctor. He's been around for a while. He's got to, he knows more than I do. He's got to be an expert in, and he's sending me an email because I signed up for it, saying that this particular supplement is something he recommends. You want to be like, okay, well, if Dr. So and so is suggesting it, then that's probably something I should spend money on. Well, it's $149 a month for this supplement. What does it do? Well, he explains it, he recommends it. He actually has research, at the end of the email, like links. Wow, okay. So I can either trust that, or I can take those 15 links, because we do live in the age of ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, AI. And what I did is I took those 15 links and I put them into Claude, which I use every day to bullshit detect. I think everybody
Yeah.
should use, you don't, I use a $100 a month version, but you don't have to pay for it. The free versions can do this too. Take that research, or copy and paste the entire email or the article that you're reading by this expert. Put it into the AI of your choice and ask it a good question. W- Is this research, and is this thesis credible? And what research would go against it? And then you'll be surprised at how many times the AI, which isn't trying to sell you something other than its subscription to itself, will give you an answer that is like, well, here's where this argument really falls short. And so when I did that, it showed me that all of this research that Dr. Hyman had put into his email, was basically bullshit, not fake, but paid for by the company of the supplement that he's recommending, and that he's getting like, the other part is, understand, and I'll end with this: understand if the person or expert recommending something to you has a financial interest in you doing that thing or buying that thing, because often it's not overt, it's hidden, and they won't tell you, even doctors. And it's an absolute shame that that's what you have to do as a consumer now. But because longevity industry is basically unregulated, it's not regulated by the FDA, these supplements, these treatments, these clinics, you have to do your own research and go at it with a real strong bullshit detector, and assume that something isn't real until it is real.
Paul von Zielbauer, thank you so much for coming on the Fulfillment Project, a podcast. If the audience wants to know more, where do they find you?
They can find me at agingwithstrength.com.
agingwithstrength.com. I've been there. I follow you on your Substack. Thank you for all the great work you're putting out. Any final words, anything I missed that you need to let the audience know about, Paul?
Yeah, the other thing that I do is I co-founded a magazine called Geezer, tongue in cheek. Don't get offended.
You called me out for using the word old and you're using the word geezer. I love that.
It's a magazine. It's print only. It comes out 3 times a year. It's a nostalgic look at the Gen X aging experience. But honestly, we found that a lot of people, a lot of millennials, a lot of kids like Gen Z are really into it because we're talking about what it was like living in analog, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s even. And it's not just a nostalgic magazine. It's a print-only magazine about all the messiness of getting older. And that could be at 40, at 50, at 70, and what it's like to take care of your parents and your kids, of, like trying to get healthy and then have something break down on your body. Relationships, sex, humor. We're kind of covering it all, but we're doing it in a print-only format. It's a really large tribal coffee table book and
Oh, I love that.
a magazine. So it's something that I think resonates with people now because everybody wants to hold something in their hands, drink some coffee or a glass of wine or whatever you drink, and just read something that's on paper. So that's the other thing I would advocate audiences look at, geezermagazine.com.
Wow. Yeah. When I'm drinking my kava at nighttime, that sounds like a beautiful thing. I'm getting on the internet right now to look that up. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too, Andy. Thanks.
Hey, everyone. Quick 10-second ask from you. If you're digging the show and you're watching on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up and comment your favorite part. If you're listening on Spotify, please give this show a 5-star rating. On iTunes, please leave a quick review. If you're listening on Substack, please subscribe and join the comments. You may want to subscribe in a few different places. For example, YouTube, you get all of our short content, 60-second to 90-second clips, our segments where we segment out 1 to 6 minute different segments of each episode. And then if you subscribe on the Substack, I summarize the episode in a newsletter. You can read it in a couple minutes. And then a couple days after the episode, I put out a self-reflection guide to help you personalize the content to your life. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Please share it with a friend.